Dear shareholders of Prismo Metals, welcome to Prismo in the News. My name is Alain Lambert. I'm a co-founder and the CEO of the company. We haven't done one like this in a long, long time, and we felt this was the appropriate time to update all of our shareholders. We had a comprehensive news release last week, so we'll talk about that. And with me today, someone familiar face, someone you know well, Craig Gibson, Dr. Craig Gibson, who's our Chief Exploration Officer. And we have an old friend as well, and I'd like him to introduce himself, Dr. Linus Keating from Tucson, Arizona. Over to you, Linus.
Hi, everyone. I've been in the mining business for more than 40 years, working mostly in porphyry coppers, epithermal gold, massive sulfides on 3 continents. And I have a doctorate of science from the VUB and a Bachelor of Science from the University of Arizona. Spent 14 years with Kennecott, and then since then I've been on the consulting trail and have worked for a wide variety of clients. But Arizona and porphyries are one of my favorite things and something I feel very comfortable with.
And we'll remind our viewers that you're also a majority shareholder of Walnut Mines that owns the Hot claims. And we also, in the last press release, announced your appointment as a special advisor to the company as it relates to Silver King. So before we get into last week's news, I would also like to remind our viewers that Linus is primary largest shareholder of Walnut Mines. Walnut Mines owns the Hot claims. And we announced his appointment in the last press release as a special advisor to our company. And Linus is also a large shareholder of Prismo Metals. So now, before we get into the press release of last week, I want to share with you, our friends here, friends of Prismo, that we have a new presentation out that you should take a look at. It's on our website. Leading into the discussion about the press release, I'm going to review a few things about Silver King. And to me, the key is what is in on the front page, page number 1 of our investor presentation, and it says, "What lies beneath the Silver King?" And part of what we're going to do today is talk about that and give a little bit of the history into the district. And when we get into drilling, the drill campaign that was recently completed, we'll try to tie together a number of observations and maybe suggest an answer to that question. The slide number 2, forward-looking statements. So we will make a number of forward-looking statements, and so please read our disclaimer. So Silver King lies in the heart of the Arizona Copper Belt. It's a very, very friendly jurisdiction. We've talked in the past that Arizona produces about 2/3 of the copper produced in the U.S. And we're right on trend. The copper belt starts from the northwest of Phoenix all the way down to Bisbee and then the Mexican border. And our 3 main projects, Hot, which now resides into Blade Resources, of which we're the largest shareholder, and Ripsey and Silver King are all part of that famous belt. Silver King is 55-minute drive on highway from the Phoenix International Airport. So very, very good infrastructure. It's right next to the town of Superior, which is the main town in what we call the Pioneer Mining District. And that's on page 3 of our presentation for the editor. The Pioneer Mining District is famous for 2 mines and 1 deposit. The first 2 mines are the Silver King, which is our project. The other one is Magma Copper Mine, which started out as the Silver Queen Mine. And just like Silver King, They produce silver, and then finally the geology at about 800 feet turned into something else, and then they start mining high-grade copper veins. The third aspect that made the Pioneer Mining District famous is the Resolution copper deposit, which, according to some analysts, might be the largest unmined copper deposit on the planet. Certainly a big one. And so that these three things make it the mining district quite famous and well known. And there's a new entrant into the district, came in last November, late November, Ivanhoe Electric, company led by Robert Friedland. They're in the permitting phase, and they're going to be drilling and doing some geophysics later this year. So for our viewers, if you're looking at our page 5 of our presentation, you can see in the middle where we are, where Silver King lies, and how it's pretty much bordered on all sides by either BHP Rio Tinto's joint venture called Resolution Copper or Ivanhoe Electric. So with that said, I think it's time to start talking about Silver King. And before we talk about the results of the drilling, if I could ask you, Craig, to give a bit of an overview. What is Silver King? What's his past? And take us all the way to today.
Thanks, Alain. Yeah, the Silver King mine is actually one of the historically most important producers in Arizona, particularly in the 1800s. It was discovered sometime before 1875 by a soldier in the military as they were putting in a road between the Florence area and Globe. And this soldier found an outcrop of black, strange rock. He threw it in his pack, didn't tell anybody, and then later left the service. He ended up in Florence at a ranch, showed this rock to a rancher there, and the rancher either assayed it or the rancher knew it was silver and pretty high grade material. So this soldier actually disappeared later on, but the rancher remembered this. They went looking for this outcrop in 1874. And he actually, while he was doing that, he found a different outcrop near Superior, which probably wasn't there yet, but Superior, and they found the claim that is known as the Silver Queen. And the next year, they went out again and looked for the Silver King again and actually found the outcrop. So in 1875, they staked the claim over the Silver King prospect, and mining started almost immediately, very high-grade mineralization at the surface. They mined it to, let's say, 70 feet below the surface. This glory hole, as they call it, became very dangerous to mine. So they put in a shaft called the engine shaft in 1879 and started working from the shaft. And that shaft actually eventually reached about 1,000 feet deep. And based on records that we have, produced about 6 million ounces of silver at very high grades. And most of the production, other than the glory hole, again from, let's say, 0 to 70 feet, was from this shaft from 300 feet to about 800 feet, extensively mined. But the records we had showed that the near surface levels, let's say above 250 to 70 feet, the deposit hadn't been extensively mined. And that was the goal of our recent drill program. We'll talk about it in a minute. It was one of the most historically significant deposits in the region, helped open up the region. And also, there's a smaller amount of production in the 1918 to 1928, but very significant deposit.
And I think it'd be good to say that since 1928, not much has happened at the Silver King until we came along. There's some older report that suggests that there might have been some drilling. There are no records that we have found. that shows any kind of extensive type of exploration. But before we get on the next topic, Linus, you've been on site. I know you've been aware as a geologist who resides in Arizona. You've been aware of the Silver King for a while. What are some of your thoughts about the history of Silver King and how it ties into the rest of the district?
Well, Silver King is fascinating to me for a couple reasons. Very commonly, well, it's not uncommon to see low temperature precious metal veins uh, at significant levels above a mineralizing intrusive. And most of the time when you go out and you drill some holes in a low temperature vein, like Silver King shows at the surface, those veins tend to pinch down at depth. Alteration disappears, and at some point or another, they come to naught. There are exceptions to that. The Comstock lode in Nevada, the Piranha mine in Mexico, Zacatecas. But by and large, it's unusual to see a low temperature vein persist at depth. And that's one of the things that strikes me about Silver King is this cigar-shaped body, which we'll discuss in a moment. But yeah, it's traced down at least to 800 feet below the surface. And then beyond that, it's sometimes in porphyry copper deposits, you have a collapse event. You see the intrusive rise, and then as it cools, it begins to collapse in on itself. And normally there's a number of fluids moving around at that time, mixing with surface waters, and sometimes depositing precious metals or base metal veins. And it's possible the Silver King is that type of scenario, both because it seems to extend to significant depth, but also given where we are in the Arizona porphyry region, certainly could be related to the collapse of a porphyry that we have not yet found.
So our shareholders will note that you went straight for the big potential, and they're going to like that. So do you and Craig, which then brings me to really the history of the Silver Queen and Magma Mine, and Craig spoke about that, and I want to give it a little bit more information, and then I'm going to ask you both to comment on the geology at Magma versus the geology at Silver King. But the short history is, as Craig mentioned, so started out as a silver producer. Eventually, they found copper veins, started mining that. I believe they mined for about 75 years. And in the mid 1990s, somebody came up with the genius idea to do underground exploration, i.e., drilling. And that led to the discovery of the monster called Resolution Copper. And so, I mean, as people who are listening know, I go on the road, I articulate that history and make the link in layman's terms to Silver King. But Craig, you go first. But if you could link that versus Silver King, but not in layman's terms, but in geological terms, if there is a link that you think is worthwhile mentioning, and then I'll go to you, Linus.
Yeah, I think the main thing to consider is you look at the Silver King versus the Magma Mine. They started off pretty similar, high-grade silver deposits, similar mineralogy, some not very common silver minerals like spermierite involved, silver-bearing tetrahedrite, which is fribergite. It's very common in Peru, but not so common up here. And those occur in both deposits. the thing with the magma mine at 600 to 800 feet below the surface that transitioned to copper. And these are copper-bearing veins and replacement deposits in favorable sedimentary rocks. And at Silver King right now, we have the high-grade silver, similar mineralogy. It's just got significant copper, zinc, and lead in it. So it's not just a silver deposit, truly a polymetallic deposit. And then adjacent to Silver King, we have similar rocks that host the magma mine, and we have similar mineralization uh, in traces and in small prospects in those units, and plus a little bit larger one called the Black Diamond. So we have similar mineralization to the magma mine. The relationship to the resolution and magma, uh, basically all these deposits are in the same similar mineral sequence, alteration zone, uh, perhaps a halo around a series of intrusions that form the resolution, and perhaps other copper deposits. Uh, as Linus was stating, Silver King may be what we call a telescope deposit. It's kind of superimposed on other mineralization. It's a little bit deeper in the geologic sequence than you would maybe expect a high-grade silver deposit. I'll let Linus maybe expand on that.
Go ahead.
So I see several similarities between magma and Silver King, and resolution for that matter. And one of the key factors is the age of the intrusive rocks. Magma or resolution is of laramide age. Magma mine has a quartz monzonite dike, which is also of laramide age. And we have laramide age intrusives at Silver King. Without that age window, that particular laramide window that runs from 55 to 75 million years, in Arizona anyway, you cannot have a productive porphyry copper. There are only two exceptions amongst several dozen porphyry coppers. But being in the laramide window is really important. And that commonality between the three helps to not only link them together, but suggests that they may have genetic relationships.
Thank you.
But
Oh, did
I
you
should
want to add
say,
anything else,
yeah,
Linus? Go ahead.
I should say too that the same sedimentary rocks that host most of the ore, well, much of the ore at magma, we also have at Silver King. And in some of the photos that come up, you can see limestone in the far distance. And those limestones are the same ones that host some of the best mineralization at magma. They also host strong mineralization at resolution, and they also host mineralization at hot breccia.
Thank you. Thank you. We should do another video soon about hot breccia. We're happy with the progress there. Um, so before we talk about the drilling campaign that was just completed, we've mentioned resolution. So in our investor presentation on page 8, you will find a few interesting stats. As I mentioned, Resolution Copper is a joint venture between Rio Tinto and BHP. I actually went into their 2025 annual report and found that the deposit contains an estimated 1.859 metric tons and an average grade of 1.52%, which, according to my calculations, that'd be 62.3 billion pounds of copper in situ. And this project was tied up in litigation for quite some time, over 10 years. Everything was settled and announced on March 16th. And one of the first things that the joint venture Resolution Copper announced is a $500 million drill campaign. So it shows the scale of it. And the last thing I'll say about Resolution is, according to Resolution, once it's on stream, it should produce up to 25% of all the copper produced in the US for 75 years. Um, we we'll go forward now to the drill. However, I would like our shareholders who are listening to take a look at the page 9 of the investor presentation that you can see here, and the it's very, very important. People will mention sometimes in investor presentations that they are very close. A junior will say, "Well, I'm very close to this, and I'm very close to that." And as National Instrument 43101 says, once you do that, you have to make the statement that mineralization on your neighbor's property doesn't mean there's mineralization at yours. That being said, we're in a very small district. We're 3.4 kilometers from resolution head frame, even closer to magma. But that very important slide is that you can see on the screen now talks about the local geology, and both Craig and Linus did a great job explaining that. So with that said, I'd like to go to drill campaign phase 1. The phase 1 was expected to be about 1,000 meters, with the primary objective to get a better understanding of the mineralized body close to surface. We gained a lot of information in the first 6 holes, and as a group, we decided to drill below the known bottom of the mine, and that's hole number 7 that we'll talk about here in a second. And then once we got that hole done, and we stopped it because we, as they say, we ran out of iron. We use all the pipes that we had on site for drilling. But we were quite satisfied with what we saw, as you're going to see. So maybe I turn it over to you, Craig, and maybe summarize some of the important observations and readings that you've made through the phase 1.
Yeah, basically the Silver King drill program was completed with just under 1,300 meters of drilling in 8 holes, and 7 of those holes were directed toward testing the upper portions of the Silver King pipe-like body. As we discussed numerous times, we felt that based on historical records that this was the most likely portion of the mine where the drilling would intersect a rock that hadn't been mined significantly in the past, and that turned out to be the case. We drilled significant intervals of quartz veining with silver sulfides, some native silver, and also zinc and lead sulfides, and galena and sphalerite. So very successful drill program. We had up to over 100 feet of quartz veining in some of these drill holes. And as Alain said, based on the first 6 holes, we were doing a pretty good job. So we decided to drill one hole a little bit deeper, basically aimed at this pipe-like body, but to intersect it below the 700 and 800 foot levels. And the 800-foot level was basically the deepest level of significant mining that we were confident that existed. So we didn't really want to drill through old stopes. We did do that in some of the other holes. We drilled through broken rock, backfill, intersected mine timbers. But we, at a deep hole, we wanted to make sure we got it down below that, let's say, 800 to 900 foot level. So we directed a steep angle hole from off of the pipe-like body, and was successful in hitting the quartz veining below the 800 level, quartz veins and stockwork. We saw a little bit different alteration down there. Not exactly sure, 100% what it means right now, but we extended that actually through the quartz veining and hit a intrusive that not exposed at the surface. And Linus had seen pieces of this intrusion on a nearby bilk shaft, which is reported about 1,200 feet deep. So we thought it was there. Linus had made a great observation. It had different alteration. And we saw that in the hole at under maybe 1,100 feet. we hit this intrusion with completely different kind of alteration, potassic alteration, pyrite in disseminated plots and small veinlets, and also associated with some chalcopyrite, which is a completely different kind of mineralization than we see at Silver King.
So Linus, you've been there a few times. You've looked at the core. What did you see?
Well, to kind of recap on what I was saying before, typically low temperature veins, polymetallic veins, tend to throttle down at depth and disappear. They're not typically at depth. They are not typically. You don't see a lot of alteration in the host rocks. Hole 7 at Silver King was an exception to that, and I have to say that I'm very pleased with the variations we saw. Craig described the intrusive we cut, possibly a quartz cyanide or a quartz monzonite, but it would be along the same lines of chemistry as resolution and magma mine. The alteration we saw in that rock is suggestive of higher temperatures, not the sort of temperatures that we typically see around an epithermal vein. In addition to some potassic alteration, we saw quartz veins with potassic selvages, but we also saw secondary biotite in quartz veins and in blebs and disseminations and replacing hornblende. And that's a significant change. That's a change that definitely says that we're heading towards the heat and not away from it. And of course, when you start talking about higher temperatures, you begin to think about intrusives and causative bodies that might be responsible for this. And so we're quite pleased with it. It's fairly amazing to have one hole that actually cut into alteration at its higher temperature and perhaps promising of an intrusive body nearby.
Thank you, Linus. Thank you. So this summarizes phase one of drilling. I want to remind our shareholders, we've said this in previous interviews that I've made and in our press release. We have elected to release all of the assay results together. And to give you an update, I believe that hole number 7 should be going into the lab later this week. Hole number 8 is being logged, is going to get caught. We'll go to the lab, hopefully early next week. And then once the results of these latter holes are received, we'll analyze what we see there, and we'll release everything in due course. So let's say 4 to 6 weeks from now, more or less. Now, that being said, we continue to work, and we're about to undertake another phase of exploration next week. We'll have Dr. Keating and Dr. Gibson on site. They will be not only on our property, but visiting some of the neighbors, let's say. And I think it's important to also to mention that this is going to be in this work, this exploration is going to be in parallel with the lab work that's happening right now. And we'll be able, when we announce the results from phase 1, we'll be able to announce the results of detailed mapping and some of the other things that we want to do, downhole geophysics and further sampling, in order to be able to give some guidance on what phase 2 drilling is going to look like. So both Craig, if you can go first, and then Linus, talk a little bit about your recommendations, your individual recommendations. I know you end up to you get to the same conclusion, but of what should be done on surface in order to help vector us in the right direction and help us get a even further understanding of what's on the property, the black diamond, the crown porphyry and so on and so forth. So over to you, Craig, first, and then please, Linus.
Well, basically, the exploration we did earlier this year, or I guess it was from the middle of last year to the end of the year, was directed toward understanding the Silver King mine and also looking for other targets. We're in the host rocks, as Linus says, that host mineralization at most of the deposits in this region. And there is mineralization at the surface, small mines and prospects. So we looked at a number of those, and we sampled those. And we've had a couple of releases out showing the replacement copper mineralization. We did some work trying to identify the different host rocks in there. The mapping in the past was not really very detailed, and we did a little bit of work identifying different intrusive phases and the rocks that host the Silver King and surrounding area. And they're actually it's much more complicated than shown on these maps, and it's a favorable point to have multiple intrusive phases in an area like this. It gives you more chance, more opportunities for mineralization. And we also identified the crown porphyry stockwork in addition to the black diamond, which that's a significant mineralized outcrop, with 1 to 5% copper at black diamond. The crown porphyry has a strong stockwork of quartz veinings with strong illitic or sericitic alteration. Looks like a high-level porphyry type intrusion. And we found some interesting silver and gold values at the surface in veins in that. So now it's get a break from the drilling, and we can go back and do more work on the geology on some of these other targets surrounding the Silver King mine itself.
Linus?
So this break in the drilling is a great opportunity for us because it gives us a chance to kind of step back and think more analytically about the Silver King property. Craig has done a lot of good work, and we've been, in the early days, we've been kind of careful about expenditures, and there hasn't been a whole lot of flexibility to take Silver King to a little bit more detailed level. And that's where we're headed at this point. We're going to take some of the old mapping and greatly augment it, try and understand better some of the faulting in the structures, try and understand the orientation and distribution of, for instance, the crown stockwork and the black diamond, specularite, skarn. Try and put it in context a little bit better. And then with that information in hand, with some more geochemistry in hand, we think that we'll be much better off in designing a drill program to pursue what may be a deeper, higher temperature target.
Well, thank you, Linus. Thank you very much, Craig. And thank you, everybody, for listening. I'll say, as part of my conclusion, as you have heard today, just like our press release, which was very detailed and very technical, we like to share technical information. We like to share that for two reasons. One is because we like to be transparent. And number two, our audience includes people that are retail investors all the way to our neighbors. So the more information that's out there, that helps people understand Silver King, which is, I think, much more, it's fair to say, much more than a silver mine that might not be completely mined out. I think we've probably established that point, but the greater picture here, phase two, is something that I'm excited about, and I'm pleased that we had this opportunity to have Craig and Linus share their wisdom, their information, their observation and thoughts about the area. So please stay tuned. And once again, to all our viewers, thank you for taking the time to watch the latest Prismo in the news.